I remember the heavy fluorescent lights in the delivery room buzzing like angry insects above my head, their glare mixing with the haze of exhaustion after nearly 16 hours of labor. Sweat clung to my temples, my braids sticking to my neck, and the sharp sterile smell of antiseptic filled the air. My body trembled uncontrollably, the adrenaline of childbirth still pulsing through me, but all I could think about was the tiny, warm weight resting on my chest. My daughter's breath puffed softly against my skin, her little fingers curling as if searching for something familiar, and in that moment all the pain evaporated into a cloud of fierce love. I whispered to her, promising everything a mother promises without even realizing she's speaking: safety, strength, roots, wings. The nurses moved around us, adjusting monitors, wiping surfaces, but my world narrowed to her sleepy face. I should have known the peace wouldn't last, because the door burst open with the loud thud of a shoe hitting the metal stopper, and there he was, my husband Marcus, sweat damp from running and smelling like cologne that wasn't the one I bought him. His face twisted when he saw me holding our child, as though her existence was some kind of threat to him. Behind him flowed his sisters, his mother, and even his cousin who never missed a chance to comment on my hair or my cooking. They lined up against the wall like spectators at a show they didn't pay for, arms folded, expressions sharp. Marcus glared at me the way a man does when he wants someone else to blame for his own mistakes, and as the doctor approached him with the clipboard, he raised his voice so everyone could hear. His words hit me like stones. He refused to sign the birth certificate and shouted that the baby didn't deserve his last name, that I had disgraced him, that I had embarrassed their family, and I watched as his mother nodded along, her lips pursed. The humiliation stung deeper than the contractions ever did, because it wasn't the kind of pain I could breathe through or push past. The baby stirred at the sound of his shouting, her little face scrunching, and I tried to soothe her with gentle circles on her back, even though my own heart was breaking. The doctor, a calm older woman with silver curls escaping her scrub cap, tried to intervene, but Marcus kept yelling, feeding off the energy of his family. They whispered among themselves, creating their own version of my life right there in front of me. I could feel tears building behind my eyes, but I blinked them away, refusing to cry in front of people who would take pleasure in my pain. I held my daughter closer, shielding her from the chaos, murmuring to her even though my own voice trembled. The nurse on my left placed a hand on my shoulder discreetly, her warm touch grounding me, reminding me I wasn't alone in that room even if I felt like I was drowning in a sea of judgment and betrayal. Marcus crossed his arms, chest puffed out, acting like he'd won something, and I kept thinking about the signs I ignored, the nights he came home late, the mysterious texts he brushed off, the unfamiliar perfume that lingered on his clothes whenever he hugged me. I had wanted so badly to believe in the man I married, to believe my daughter deserved a whole family, even if the cracks were already showing months before she was born. As he continued to spit venom, the doctor stepped between us, her steady presence slicing through the noise with the authority of someone who had seen too much life to tolerate foolishness. Her voice was firm, a warning wrapped in compassion, but even then Marcus smirked and shook his head like a child daring her to scold him. I wanted to scream at him that this wasn't about his ego, that a baby was lying defenseless in my arms, needing love instead of chaos, but I didn't have the strength. I just held my daughter, whispered to her, and prayed silently for peace that seemed 1,000 miles away. The doctor's voice shifted then, taking on a tone I had never heard from her before, a softness laced with gravity, the kind of tone that makes everyone in the room forget their arguments. She stepped closer to Marcus, holding the clipboard not as a demand but as an offering of truth. The room quieted, even his loud-mouthed cousin straightened up, sensing that something had changed. Marcus's bravado wavered for the first time since he barged into the room. The doctor explained gently that the baby had shown signs of respiratory distress during delivery, that there were indicators of possible complications, that they needed both parents' cooperation immediately to authorize certain tests. She spoke with kind clarity, making sure I understood too, but her eyes lingered on Marcus, challenging him to meet the weight of responsibility he'd been trying to sidestep. His jaw clenched, his breathing changed, and for a moment the man who had just humiliated me in front of his whole family looked like a scared boy pretending to be a man. He stared at the tiny bundle in my arms, but instead of love or fear or anything real, there was just confusion, ego scrambling to decide what mattered more, the performance he'd been putting on, or the undeniable truth that he was a father now whether he claimed it or not. His mother whispered something into his ear, something I couldn't hear but could easily imagine. Her words had always been poison disguised as advice, pushing him away from accountability while pretending she was trying to guide him. She had never accepted me, never believed I was worthy of her son, always finding ways to criticize me, from the way I dressed to the way I cooked. She'd say I was too emotional, too independent, too opinionated, but when Marcus cheated, lied, and spent money we didn't have, she'd shake her head and sigh like boys will be boys. The doctor continued talking, explaining the importance of early intervention, her tone unyielding yet patient, and I clung to every word because my daughter's fragile breaths were more important than any drama unfolding in that room. The machine beside me beeped softly, reminding me of the thin line between safety and danger for newborns, and I felt guilt seep into me like cold water under a door. I wondered whether the stress he was causing could affect her, whether the shouting might have startled her too deeply, whether she could sense the tension even though she had only been alive for minutes. My mind flashed back to the prenatal appointments I attended alone, the way I rubbed my belly in waiting rooms trying to reassure myself that everything would eventually get better. I remembered the nights I lay awake, staring at the cracked ceiling of our apartment, wondering whether I could do this by myself if I had to. I hadn't wanted to face that reality, but here it was, wrapped in a hospital blanket, breathing softly against my chest. Marcus swallowed hard, the noise louder than the beeping machines, and I saw the moment reality clicked into place in his mind. His hands trembled, not with anger this time but with fear, raw fear, the kind a father feels when he realizes the life he helped create might need more from him than he is prepared to give. His bravado slipped, his eyes darted between me, the doctor, and the baby, and for a brief second I almost pitied him. But the memory of his voice shouting that my daughter didn't deserve his last name burned through that pity like acid. The room felt smaller, the air heavier, the tension pressing down on all of us. I took a deep breath, steadying myself because my daughter needed me strong, and even though my heart was fractured, it still beat with purpose. The doctor waited for Marcus to say something, but his family shifted behind him, their whispers sounding like a hive of disapproval. I felt the first tear slip down my cheek, not from pain or humiliation this time, but from a cold understanding settling into my bones. The truth was loud and undeniable. I was the only one who had been fighting for this child from the start, and I would continue fighting even if I had to do it alone. The nurse asked softly if she could take the baby for testing, and my heart clenched as I handed my daughter over, her body so small in the nurse's capable arms. She let out a soft whimper as she was lifted, and it felt like someone was peeling away a part of me. The nurse offered a reassuring smile before stepping out, leaving the room quieter than it had been since the chaos started. Without my daughter in my arms, the weight of everything collapsed onto me all at once. I folded my hands together in my lap, trying to calm the tremor running through them. The doctor turned to me, her expression softer now, and explained the procedures they'd run and what symptoms they were monitoring. I nodded, absorbing every detail like it was oxygen. Marcus stood stiffly near the foot of the bed, staring at his shoes as though he expected them to provide some kind of guidance. His sisters exchanged worried glances, their earlier confidence deflated now that the situation wasn't just gossip material. His mother shifted her purse higher onto her shoulder and muttered something under her breath about how this wasn't the time for drama, conveniently ignoring the fact that they had been the ones bringing it into the room. I felt anger simmer beneath my skin, not fiery and explosive but steady and simmering, born from months of silent endurance. I remembered the bills I paid while Marcus spent money on dinners I never ate, the nights he went out with friends and left me at home with swollen feet and swollen emotions, the lies he told with a straight face and the apologies he never meant. I remembered every time I defended him, every time I blamed myself, every time I convinced myself that loyalty meant staying even when staying meant losing pieces of myself. As these memories flooded through me, I felt something inside me harden into resolve. The doctor excused herself to check on the baby, and silence filled the room like thick fog. Marcus took a hesitant step toward me, his voice suddenly soft, almost fragile, and he said he didn't mean what he said, that he was just overwhelmed, that he was scared. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw a man who only faced responsibility when fear cornered him. His mother tried to chime in, acting like she could smooth things over, but I held up a hand, stopping her words midair. The family shifted uncomfortably, not used to me speaking with firmness. I told Marcus he didn't have to sign anything if his pride mattered more than his child, but I wouldn't beg him or chase him for support he wasn't willing to give freely. The words came out calm but sharp, each one slicing through the excuses he had always relied on. His sister stared at me with surprise, maybe even respect, but his mother pursed her lips, clearly preparing a lecture she couldn't voice now that the social power in the room had shifted. Marcus whispered that he wanted to be there, that he just needed time to adjust, but I could see the hesitation in his eyes, the way he struggled between wanting to save face and wanting to do what was right. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I let the silence stretch, giving him room to face the reality he had created. The door opened then, and the nurse returned, her expression calm but serious. She said the baby was stable for now but would need monitoring for a few hours. Relief flooded me, my shoulders sagging as tension released like air from a balloon. Marcus exhaled loudly, as though the news absolved him of everything that had happened. But relief didn't erase the memory of his shouting or the humiliation I endured. It didn't erase the truth I had carried alone for months. It didn't erase the fact that when our daughter entered this world, my husband's first instinct had been cruelty instead of compassion. The nurse asked if I wanted to see my daughter, and I nodded, already reaching for the blanket at my side to wrap around myself before standing. Marcus moved to help, but I gently stepped around him, needing space, needing breath, needing distance from the man who had just shown me the depth of his selfishness. As I walked down the hallway beside the nurse, I felt a strange mixture of grief and strength. Grief for the family I thought I had, and strength for the mother I knew I could be. When the nurse placed my daughter back into my arms, all the noise faded away once more. Her tiny chest rose and fell steadily now, her lips forming a perfect little bow as she slept. I pressed my cheek against her soft hair, inhaling her scent, and in that moment clarity washed over me like warm sunlight after a long storm. I realized I didn't need Marcus's last name for her. She already had mine, she already had my love, she already had my strength. I sat in the rocking chair by the window, watching the city lights flicker through the blinds, and let myself finally cry, not from despair but from release. The tears felt like a cleansing, washing away months of fear and exhaustion. Marcus eventually entered the room quietly, his family waiting outside, but I didn't look up right away. I focused on my daughter's peaceful breathing, grounding myself in the one truth that mattered: I was her mother, and that was enough. When I finally raised my eyes, Marcus stood there with the clipboard in his hands, the pen trembling between his fingers. His face was blotchy, his eyes red, and he whispered that he wanted to sign it. But this time, I didn't rush to soothe his guilt or validate his change of heart. I let him sit with his remorse. I told him calmly that signing the certificate wouldn't erase what he said, that being a father was more than a signature, more than a last name, more than showing up when fear made him. I told him I needed actions, not apologies, consistency, not theatrics. He lowered his head, and for the first time in our marriage, I saw him truly humbled. His mother peeked through the doorway, but I didn't acknowledge her. My entire focus was on the future I was building for my daughter and myself, one rooted in honesty and strength, even if it meant walking it alone. Marcus signed the birth certificate quietly, handing it to the doctor without ceremony, and then he sat beside me, not touching me, not insisting on anything, just sitting. I didn't know what the future held for us, whether our marriage would survive, whether he would grow into the man our daughter deserved, but for once I wasn't afraid of the unknown. I looked at my daughter, her small hands curled into tiny fists as if ready to take on the world, and I felt courage rise inside me. The kind of courage women discover only when pushed to their limits, the kind that blooms in the cracked spaces where dreams once lived. I kissed her forehead and whispered that I loved her, that she was enough, that we would be okay. The nurse dimmed the lights. The room fell into peaceful quiet. And as the rocking chair creaked gently beneath us, I held my daughter close and embraced the truth that had always been waiting for me. I was stronger than betrayal, stronger than humiliation, stronger than the pain of abandonment. I was a mother now, and that meant I would rise, rebuild, and protect with a love that no one could take away.